this is the piece that we want to talk about. Timing, skills, tone of voice, understanding your partner's communication style, and then understanding your own. And you and I talked about, why are we starting with a podcast to women about understand your man? We spend all day trying to understand them. And my argument would be, let's just go first, please. We want the connection. We want healthier relationships. We want desire back in our relationships. Make the changes in us, and the relationship will shift.
Welcome to Understand Your Man. I'm Nathan Joblin, co-founder of Modern Wisdom Press and author of the book Trapped, The Responsible Man's Guide to Personal Freedom and Happiness.
And I'm Natasha Pereira, a psychotherapist with 20 years in the field, working firsthand with men who are trying to show up for their partners and families. I bring the perspective that we as women need to heal and ground ourselves in our own energy so that we make space that invites our partners forward to connect to us in the intimacy and safety that we crave, that we deserve.
This podcast aims to build a bridge between men and their female partners by offering an understanding of why your man may not be showing up in the way you know he's capable of. Hey, Natasha.
Hi, Nathan. How you doing?
So, what are we doing here?
We are looking at the changing roles and dynamics between men and women really in the last 50 years, and how those of us in sort of our demographic, our 70s, 80s babies, really only had mom and dad and grandparents and the malls around us to understand relationship dynamics and relationship connection. And what the people that came before us needed in relationships are very different in our modern world. Really now we're looking for, do you see me? Do you understand me? Am I free to be myself? Really, before it was, am I a good provider to you? And am I a good nurturer to you and the family? And it's not that those roles aren't required anymore. It's just men and women are sharing in those roles in a very different way without necessarily having the skills or tools to communicate it to each other because we didn't have those models. So I'm seeing these men coming into my practice going, I'm doing the best I can. I'm giving everything that she wants. While the partner's looking at me going, he doesn't hear a thing that I say and I'm getting nothing that I want. And they're both depleted and they're both really trying. That's what I'm doing here. How about you, Nathan?
I am responding to topics and not reacting, but responding. That's the goal. And, I like the new relationship dynamics. There's a sense of partnership maybe that wasn't, thought of in those ways in the traditional family. And it really works for me. I did not have an operating manual. And so I don't think that I hit my stride in relationship until, the past few years. And in whatever way I can be of service and we can be of service in shortening someone's runway, to clearing away the cobwebs and having a little more clarity on things, then I'm very happy to be here.
Love that. And what really sparked a lot of this was your book, Trapped, and really sharing your own journey as a man and what it feels like to be a man with the pressures that we have in society today and going from boyhood into adulthood in that way, which I think a lot of women would find really surprising. And I know a lot of men identified with.
Yeah, thank you. And just a couple of things, touching back to a few minutes ago when you talked about understanding, the concept of understanding and feeling understood on a deeper level, who I am as opposed to what I'm saying on a practical level, what needs to get done, was not a distinction I really understood. I knew in my life that it wasn't there, something was missing, but I didn't understand the distinction, because in these roles we have, it's go, 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 and so my feet were on the ground in terms of accomplishing things and being of support and raising kids. And so my level of understanding extended to understanding the logistics of the evening and perhaps some medium or short range goals for the family. But really, it was all seat of the pants stuff. And when I learned what it felt like to feel understood just on a basic level, like a deeper understanding that a really good friend would give you, but someone who's in partnership, It was really revolutionary, and it softened me, and it set my standards higher than what I had before. And so that concept of understanding, it's going to come up a lot for me because it was so primary. It was the very thing that helped me start to enjoy my life. I would say I would just make that statement boldly like that. It was the thing that really helped me enjoy my life.
And I love hearing that, the idea of like understanding leads to enjoyment. And one of the number one things that I see, it's not that the partners don't love each other. It's not that they don't have the same shared goals. It's not that they don't want the same things. They just don't understand each other because women and men do have different needs and they do have different ways of communicating that.
Yeah. I would like to ask a question. Understanding of what they need. I would say hopefully, but in sense of not feeling understood myself, I don't see how I could have really had an understanding of what it is I want or need because I can't. I'm not good at that on my own. It's the monkey mind, it's the circular thoughts. And so do you find in your work that women have an understanding of what they want and need, or is it kind of a question mark in this new world we're in as well?
So I love this question. And let's break it down a little bit in understanding that women as a category and men as a category have a lot of diversity within us, right? Women biologically also have a lot of either masculine or feminine energy. And we'll talk about what that looks like. Same thing with sort of the demographic of men. They have each individually either a mix of feminine qualities and energies and masculine qualities and energies. What that means, that's actually not gender specific, it's how we show up in the world. So, masculine energies are doing energies, are providing, are logical, are rational. It's an energy. The feminine energies are generally speaking nurturing, receiving, being. So, me as a woman, I'll use myself. I have a lot of masculine energies and qualities. I have my own business. I raise my kids. I'm out in the workforce. I'm, strong and bold and opinionated. Masculine qualities doesn't make me manly. And what's happened now in sort of a more modern world is that our gender roles have freed up in the sense that we can express masculine and feminine qualities in a different way within the individual. How we communicate that to our biological male partners and how they communicate their energies to women are somewhat stuck in the communication skills that we've inherited from our parents, where they were not exploring their masculine and feminine energies. The traditional roles were pretty well defined. And so, what we're looking to do is sort of, like I said, bridge the gap between how do I express my need for nurturing and to nurture and my need for independence and doing in a language that my male partner understands, and equally in the way that he can communicate to me in the way that I understand. So, going back to your question, those women that are listening, when you're with your girlfriends and you barely need to say anything, they just get you. They just get you. We use a lot of words, even though we need to barely say anything, but they get you. And Nathan, I know you and I have talked about when you're with a group of men, there's usually not a lot of words and it's not about your feelings. This is the way that we are socialized. So to expect men that haven't necessarily been socialized, again, 70s and 80s babies, to come in and listen to my deepest feelings and wants and desires when you just come back from work and have stuffed down all of your feelings. And like you said, just want to enjoy your family. But I've been waiting to be heard, seen, and connected to. Usually not the best time, ladies. And so this is the piece that we want to talk about. Timing, skills, tone of voice, understanding your partner's communication style, and then understanding your own. And you and I talked about why are we starting with a podcast to women about understand your man? And I said, oh, I know my girlfriends have had a lot to say about it. As far as we need to understand them, we spend all day trying to understand them. And my argument would be, let's just go first, please. We want the connection. We want healthier relationships. We want desire back in our relationships. Make the changes in us, and the relationship will shift. So it's about going first. It's not about doing all the work.
Yeah, I resonate with that, and I think, from the male perspective here, stepping forward in that way and offering the space and which is open and understanding gives me permission to just step out of just trying to figure all this shit out in my head, because that's for whatever reason, many reasons, that's the default is, I might be in fight or flight, or just more fundamentally my gendered role, or even more specifically, my role as a people pleaser, which is a tendency I have. I'm trying to figure out how to solve problems before, they're really a problem. And so to step forward and make space, and we'll talk about this more, but having some real understanding about, for example, do-overs, like I would like permission. I think everyone has permission for when we say something awkwardly or upsetting, but not intending to do so, as best we can, pause and say, I would like a do-over. And the other person says yes and means it. That's just, that's groundbreaking and wonderful. And it's just little things like that. And personally, I think that I would benefited from that invitation to step forward, like, okay, from the sense that someone wants to see me and they think that I'm worth it. It's just like my little boy, he's, it's like, let's make him happy and safe. And then the adult Nathan, who's got some savvy and some street experience navigating life, can step up and be more present and not so reactive.
You're bringing us right into the conversation of the nervous system, which I love, which is this idea of your body and nervous system want to feel safe to screw up, get it wrong, not have all the information, and take a pause. And when anyone walks into a room, the first thing they sense is what's happening in the other person energetically. And ladies, we may think that we got a smile on our face and maybe like a pretty dress, or we're going to hold on to all of our anger or anxiety until the time is right. And yes, timing is important. But if your energy isn't balanced, if it isn't calm, they feel that before they even get in the door. I don't care how dense you think your partner is. They feel everything. And that's what I'm hearing you say, Nathan, right? Like, you want to not have to figure it out all on your own, like you're on attack. Or if you get it wrong, there's going to be even more of a problem. Is that about right?
It's true. I can't underestimate, the years of responsibility I've had as an adult, as an employee, as a parent. That's non-gendered. That's the need to get everything right is like, it's very difficult and very challenging. And I feel the weight of it. I feel it less, because of just being in a place where I feel safer communicating, but it's still there. Like, I'm still strategizing all the time. I mean, that's our natural state. We're strategizing, we're solving problems. It's not me. It's not a problem that I have. But when that energy is there on either side, and we sense it, then we're straight into our strategies, and there's not a damn thing I can do about it.
Agreed. And equally to women, when we feel you're closed down, or I don't want to deal with this, or oh, you're another problem, we fly into our strategies.
Yeah.
And where men are sort of conditioned to problem solve and figure it out on our own, ours, just because generally speaking, historically, we've been smaller, we haven't been able to overpower, ours are mostly manipulation. That generally speaking is the way that we get about getting what we want. And I don't know one man on the planet that likes feeling as though he's being controlled, manipulated, or things are being done behind his back. Including ladies just randomly putting this podcast on in the car one day and going, ooh, I wonder what this is. We want to be straightforward and honest when your partner feels safe enough to hear you. So these are some of the things that we're going to start talking about. It is loving and it is kind and it is polite to understand what your needs are and where your partner is at the moment with their capacity. And that doesn't mean that we suppress our needs and we put ourselves down and that we just make space for everyone else. We're not people pleasing here. We're living in reality, taking stock of what's working and what's not working for ourselves first, and then understanding what changes we need to make so that our partner feels safe enough to problem solve with us, and really understanding the capacity that they have. Because Nathan, I'm hearing you say, and you and I have talked about the stresses and pressures on men that I don't think women are always really aware of, that you talk about so well in your book. Can you tell us a little more about that, about what it's like actually being a man in the workplace, in families, with kids, with friendships, where you don't always feel as though you have all of the answers and that no one's got your back?
Well, it begins so much earlier than the relationship. It's the cycle we're on from education to work. In my experience, there were very few moments in there when I really got to decide what was for me. And then immediately, in many of our experiences, we're put right into work. And I remember feeling deathly afraid. I think I was probably 20 or 3 or 24, that if I didn't have it all figured out and was successful by the time I was 30, that this was going to suck. This was all going to suck. And, fortunately, life happens and there's wonderfulness, and 30 rolls by and everything's fine, but I can only describe that as a base fear. And I don't know there's a lot of ego in that fear. I think probably a lot of ego in terms of successfully navigating our society and being seen and recognized. And then you get plugged into work and that kind of gets stripped away from you in the sense that you're not an individual. Capitalism doesn't care about the individual. It's about systems. And so here we are as individuals with dreams and fears, plugged into a system that doesn't really care about them. And I don't know about you, but I didn't have much life skills. I had no relationship skills. And so all of that followed, relationship and parenthood followed when I was already in a confused place, feeling in a corner. So I'm not alone in that. I mean, that's the economy we're in, but it was from the beginning of my actual practical adulthood that it was kind of, and I was in that corner. I think that's how I would put it, because the corner makes sense for me because my MO is to retreat, and be quiet and not be seen. And so that metaphor works for me. I don't know how else to answer your question other than it goes from there.
I think that's a great way to answer the question, where it really is right off the hop. What are you going to do? How are you providing? What's your skill set? What are your abilities? And it's very competitive.
Yeah.
Boys to men, and then the workplace. It's not about feelings and it's not about who you are and being seen.
Yeah.
So you don't really develop the relational skills. Again, we're talking about 70s and 80s babies. I've got two teenage boys that grew up in a very different way.
Mm-hmm.
So men don't really have that. And then at, 45, 55, we want them to understand and navigate our emotional landscape. Where with women, we have a very different relational experience in school. Yes, we have the same pressures to achieve. We're professionals, we do that. But our female relationships and the way that we navigate them, we have a lot more training in that, even subconsciously, about how we maneuver through our female groups, really understanding the dynamics between men trying to date us or trying to court us. There's a different level of education that we get passed down from our mothers, from our grandmothers. Again, I'm speaking loosely, but women and men are reared differently as children to adults. We also take on very different wounds. Hence, we also have very different needs. And so it's important to hear for men about, we didn't really get any of that. Right away off the factory, it's like, who are you? What are you doing? Where are we going? And that's the masculine energy I'm talking about. I see you smiling.
I just want to build on that just a little bit. And, that transition from school, from college per se, into work, is seamless, right? And so if I've been operating with my survival strategies learned at 5 or 6 years old or even younger, before I had experience with the world, it's one arm tied behind our back, to step into that, to step into, adulthood and opportunity, but having the skill set, really of a child. It's perplexing. It's perplexing. And so,
Sorry, it's just funny to hear because I have lots of men that have said that to me in like therapy sessions where they're like, if she only knew that my interests are really the same ones I had when I was 8. Like, I actually haven't changed that much since I was a kid and wanting to be loved there. And I always say to them, they don't want another child. You already gave them a couple. But really, right? Us all maturing ourselves to understand that the heart of us is still a kid
yeah.
and the vulnerability is still a kid. But how do I communicate and meet my partner from my adult
All right.
self?
Well, then this leads to the ultimate promise of this podcast for the male, as I see it, is to recognize the patterns and strategies. React less, respond more. Respond has a pause. That's how I think of it. Has a pause for thought, for consideration. So less reaction, more response, fewer strategies. And then an understanding that with this acknowledgement and partnership, there's a turbocharge available to move through things, And if we can acknowledge and that strategy, whatever's up and causing problems, if we can acknowledge that strategy and the root of it and thank it and let it go, that's a process. It's not as simple as me saying it. There is such a relaxation available on the other side of that because we're holding on, right? We're holding on to all this shit right now, holding on tight, hoping it works out. And it's just not serving us. And so there's a measurable feeling when you've looked at something and then move through it. If that language works for you, move through it to the other side of I'm aware of it, but it doesn't own me. There is like happiness available there. And you do it once, you do it twice, you do it 3 times, and it becomes something more pleasurable as opposed to, oh God, now I have to work on myself, which is where I've been,
Bang on. And in order for our men to do what you're suggesting they do, which is like just drop it a little bit and really lean in, we need to make an environment that feels safe enough to even do that. Because if you're going to be vulnerable enough to go, hey, I don't have it all together, but we're safe and I am strong and I can figure this out. And I just saw your face when I said, I don't have it all together. And you're like, I would never admit that because
that's down the road. That's later.
Of course. But to even get to that place of vulnerability of like, how do we do this together? Knowing what my role is to make you feel safe and knowing what your role is so that we feel connected. But we need to be a little more honest with each other about what we really need and what's working and what's not working. And the only way we can do that is if we, as women, invite them to feel safe enough to show a little more vulnerability.
Yeah, that takes me back to the opening conversation around, not having an operating manual, and it's true that on both sides of the relationship, we're co-creating. We don't have precedent. We are co-creating this together. And that feels nice, even just saying it that way.
Yeah. Co-creating it together while also respecting the strengths and gifts that each of us bring, both biologically, traditionally, and in this modern age where we're also looking to express different sides of our own unique personality, both masculine and feminine qualities in each of us. So how we do that together is going to be unique for each person, but the tips, strategies, practical neuroscience applications, you and I are going to discuss in the next couple of weeks. So I'm excited.
I like it. And that's the show. We'll be back next week with new insight and clarity in building a bridge of understanding between men and women in partnership, leading to the deeper connections we all seek. In the meantime, please subscribe to Understand Your Man wherever you listen to podcasts. And if you found any of this inspiring or helpful, please leave us 5 stars and a positive review. Remember, sharing your opinion as a listener is the best way for others to find us and, hopefully, begin to engage the tips and practical guidance offered here in their own lives in new and exciting ways. If you would like to send us a question or suggest a topic for discussion, feel free to reach out via email at understandyourmanpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you.